Chinese spy balloon.
A surveillance balloon.
Giant Chinese balloon.
High-altitude surveillance balloon.
Spy balloon, eh? Yeah, we remember this little incident from February 2023. From what I could see from the images online and from the news, this spy balloon wasn't a bad-looking bit of kit that was flying around over the skies of North America. And that was a good enough excuse for me to attempt to build one. With that being said, welcome to Wayward Models. So, I start off with 3D printing the truss frame. Sure, if these types of trusses have different names, but I made one with 3 sides for the solar arrays, and I made another one with 4 sides that would be the main frame of the balloon's technology bay, or at least that's what they're calling it online. Stuck it all together using AK's Black Widow glue. It's not a bad glue at all. Probably took around about 20 seconds to dry, but this stuff is really nice to use. I stare at the polystyrene sheet, calculating the build ratio of the balloon. Eventually, I settle on 2.1 centimeters, making the scale of the model around 1 to 1/20th. It measures up nicely, and I start producing the 16 solar arrays with the chopper. And this thing is bloody sharp and very satisfying to use, and honestly, I could do this all day. So now we come to the main fuselage. I'm using a small container used for hobby knife blades, and then I 3D print which I think the dishes may look like. Found a Metal Earth kit of the Saturn V space rocket. I got it for around about $15. And looking at the rocket and the launch tower, you can see that there's some awesome parts which will be amazing to use on this model. The metal bends quite easily, and I was just playing around, trying to find a good fit, and it felt just right, so I just kept carrying on what I was doing. Going back to AK's Black Widow glue, I poured some in a container for easy use, and I started bringing these elements together. I thought it would be good to test and fit the frame first, not just for fitting purposes, but to make sure it looked right and it felt right. You can see here I used the lid of the hobby knife container again. It just felt right to use. It didn't feel right leaving the fuselage empty and open, so with these extra photo etch parts and a few spares from other kits, I populated the undercarriage. The spy balloon appears to have one main central fuselage, so now I'm creating the other 2 that seem a little bit slightly smaller from the photos what I've seen. I sand down the polystyrene tubes with a heavy grit sanding stick. I repeat this, but this time I'm using a fine sanding mat from AK. This is very therapeutic and very satisfying to do. I decided to use a heavy Tamiya hobby saw this time round. I found this one much easier than the smaller blade that I was using before. It glides through the polystyrene like butter. So good. I sand down the edges, apply some more of the Saturn V rocket, and it feels like it's coming together. Now this bit of kit is from a Soviet BTM-3 trumpeter kit. It's missing a few bits here and there, but these kits are a goldfield for greeblies and spare parts for kit bashing. To me, this looks like it could be a spy camera which would be taking pictures down on the ground below. If you look closely, you can see that this is a different truss from what I had at the very beginning of the video. I found that gluing the smaller prints together just didn't work, so I ended up deciding to print a much larger, longer print. Now, this primer is not my primer of choice. I really wanted to finish the bottle. I find this stuff is way too thick, and I find it blocks my airbrush. Just after a few minutes, no matter how I dilute it or how high I set my air pressure, I just can't get on with this stuff. The problem is that this is actually an amazing primer. It's strong and it's great once it's dried, but the constant cleaning and clearing of the airbrush is always a struggle. But then, there's nothing better than the uniformity of a kit once it's primed. Due to the trauma of my constant clogging airbrush, I completely forget to film the spraying of the fuselage and frame with AK's Metal Extreme. I used dark aluminium for the frame, and then I used pale burnt metal for the fuselage. Both are an absolute pleasure to use. I used some Tamiya weathering powder, which is great for dry brushing. This helps all the raised parts pop out, and you can see here I'm using the titanium and the copper powders. I applied black panel liner, which I cleaned up a little bit later on with a brush and some white spirit. And now for the solar panels. You can see in photos of the spy balloon that each of the 16 panels have additional sections from within, so I represent this by a little bit of masking. And here I am using again AK's Extreme Metal, and this time it's metallic blue. Here, I'm just having fun. Still emotionally scarred from using the primer, I was just having the time of my life. I was thinking to myself, do I do a couple of thin layers, maybe 3? But nah, this was so much fun, I just kept going up, going down, left and right. I was having the time of my life, I just didn't care, I just kept spraying. This is removing the masking tape. I give this 5 out of 5, 10 stars for enjoyment, fully recommend it. Try it for yourself, you'll have a blast. With all the solar panels completed, I start applying them to the frame now. Now this time I'm using AK's Magnet Superglue. I find this dries within seconds, and it's so much faster compared to the Black Widow glue. The satellite dishes seemed a little bit too bright for me, so I decided to paint over the Tamiya XF2 white coat. Now I did this by using Warhammer's Citadel paint. The paint I actually used was base Corax white, which was a much better off-white finish. And here we go, it's all coming together. This piece is from a second-hand kit. Again, it's from the Saturn V. Not the metal Earth piece, but Airfix's Saturn V. And from this unit, we'd have the cable which goes all the way down and connect to the technology bay itself. It was believed that the balloon was flying at around about 60,000 feet, and that's around about 18,000 meters above the Earth. I imagine at this height, it would see some serious weathering. It's come halfway around the planet, this thing is not going to be looking new. I started using AK's weathering pencils. To be precise, this was the gun metal weathering pencil, and this was to highlight parts of the satellite dish, and this was to help give it kind of like a metallic feel. I use the environment range weathering paint ever so finely. Now you got to be careful because this is an acrylic, and unlike enamels, you don't have that luxury of kind of blending in or using some white spirit and fading away a little bit later on. So you have to be very careful and make sure that when you put it down, you put it precisely where you want it to go. And there we go, and here we are. Like any other YouTube video when we're making models, we need a scene where we've got some twirls, there's a dark background, there's some light looking at the model, so sit back, relax, and enjoy my spy balloon. But wait, that's not it. I said that this baby was going to fly, and I am a man of my word. I awkwardly try and fit this 60cm diameter helium balloon onto my workspace. I chop off the nozzle, I ensure it's tight, and then I use fishing line which can hold up to 10 kilograms. This fishing line will be used to connect the balloon to the technology bay itself. If there's any fishermen out there who recommend better knots, then please let me know. But due to my lack of knot knowledge, I use some super glue for some extra strength and also a little bit of reassurance. The last thing I want is sending this thing up into the sky and losing it forever. Just like the CCP. And there we go, it flies. I unhook the fishing line and it's floating up a little bit. It's actually flying. This is my first ever actual flying model. I needed a shot where the array is waving back or forth to give it that effect, you know. However, Jin the cat saw this and he was eager as an F-22 Raptor. He was trying to take this balloon down. And welcome to outside. And what a terrible day for flying. We have extreme wind warnings throughout Melbourne in Australia today, but I decided to fly anyway because I'm just simply so excited to see this thing get high. I wasn't the only excited one at this point. My wife saw that I was flying a balloon in the back garden. Before you know it, she was out here wanting to go as well. With no consideration for the balloon and no fear of risk whatsoever, she decided to take the balloon from the very small sheltered part of the garden and take it straight into the middle of the garden itself in the full path of the wind. And as you can see, things got very real very quickly.
Is it stuck?
And with all that, I entered the balloon into the Australian Model Expo 2023. I entered the balloon into the scratch built category where I came third. There you go, not so bad. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like this, please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.